Pops on Pop Culture moment. Best Westerns of all time. So sometimes I get the studio, especially we have no movies, right? So let's just be honest, right? Like every few weeks we get one digital movie, and I'm not getting screeners for most of them. I actually knew about some of these more recent ones, and I don't have a screener. But instead I got offered, I guess it's because Father's Day. We're filming this ahead of Father's Day. It was Dads love Westerns. Do you like Westerns?
Never a big fan, but my dad did, and so I remembered movies like True Grit.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
The John Wayne one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was never a fan.
Not a fan.
Unforgiven was okay.
Okay.
But of the Clint movies, it was
not your thing?
the top for me, yeah.
Well, have you seen a lot of Westerns? Most people haven't seen Westerns.
No, that's why, because I was inundated with that as a kid.
Oh, all right.
Yeah,
okay.
It just didn't do anything for me. If I gave it a shot now, maybe I'd be different now.
I have to admit, this has been good for me because I actually kind of, like yourself, my grandfather was my influence in that arena. Loved watching Westerns, mostly John Wayne Westerns. It was pretty much John Wayne Westerns. I mean, poor Clint didn't make it really into the cycle. And I do have an appreciation for a lot of those. And I kind of put together, there's been movie reviews all over Tampa Dispatch. And if you go on to Pops on Pop Culture Facebook page, you'll see me putting up these different reviews on these different Westerns. I've kind of compiled a list of what some of the best Westerns are. And I will say a lot of the old Westerns are pretty good. However, there's a certain stigma of what Hollywood Westerns were during that time frame. But like if you remember these John Wayne, directed by John Ford Westerns, and we can go back further than that, but it's always very clean, right? They have... No one's getting a black eye. No one's getting bloodied up. They get shot. There's like a blood spot on the middle of their back. No one is having their guts shot. No one's getting shot in the face.
It was a different time.
Right? A lot of the shots have these long, large, wide panoramic shots with orchestra music and not oranges and pretty colors and landscapes, that kind of thing, right? So this is how most Westerns and a lot of these lists are full of those. And I mentioned The Searchers in a previous segment. John Wayne movie, Rio Bravo. These are the kind of movies that I think about. Of the ones that I watched, I haven't finished it, but Magnificent Seven is kind of at the top of my list on that. But that's mostly because it was such an incredible cast. I watched it again, and I'll say it is not rewatchable compared to these other films. I thought these other films were superior to... So if I had a bottom of my list, Magnificent Seven is there. Yul Brynner was just not... They dressed him in all black. And he's supposed to be the cool one that puts together the team of all these quick shooters to defend this poor little town of Mexicans that need someone to help fend off the Mexican, warlord Eli Wallach that's coming into town. And, it's great because you see Robert Vaughn and James Clybourne, and this is one of the earliest, I think, Charles Bronson films. I don't know the timeline of Bronson. I'm not an expert on Charles Bronson. I will tell you it is possibly the best Charles Bronson scene I've ever seen because it reminded me of my grandkids. And I'm only doing this because I want to make sure this is on film so my grandkids will know how much I love this scene. I shared it with my family so they could see that. I wish we had time that I could share with you. So there's a scene. Charles Bronson, clean shaven, cowboy suit up, right? Clean, right? Got his gun, his rifle. These three little Mexican boys kind of come up like they're tiered, right? So everybody's face has got to be on camera. And they tell him how we picked you. We picked you, sir. He's like, what do you mean you picked me? Well, we have you, so we'll be there cheering for you. And if you die, we'll be the ones that'll be putting flowers on your grave. And he was like, well, I hopefully will let you down and you won't have to do that. And he's like, I think we'd rather have you alive as well. He's like, the other kid goes, well, maybe. And then there's a pause, and then the littlest kid goes, maybe. And it was golden. It was the best. Bronson's responding to this with like a bigger and bigger smirk. It was one of the better scenes that doesn't get talked about. I actually couldn't find a YouTube clip of just that piece. It's frustrating. I'm going to keep searching for it because that was one of my favorite parts. It's still a good film. All-star cast. It moves pretty quick. It's all right, but it's at the bottom of my list. The reason I kind of went on the backstory with the Hollywood movies is because I think the best Western of all time, which is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, is part of a trilogy of movies called A Fistful of Dollars. Called the Dollar Trilogy. The first one is A Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More. These are Clint Eastwood movies. So the story of Clint Eastwood is, he was on Rawhide, and he's this good-looking guy. And it's like, what do you do with your career? You're not getting the gig that you want. And this is where the term spaghetti western comes in, because they go to Europe and they're filming these things on like in Spain, and spaghetti was like an adjective to be derogatory. These are lesser. And again, it's not got the big orchestra. It doesn't have the big glamorous shots. But when you watch it, it actually holds up. They're better now because we prefer to have movies that are more realistic and believable. And the Sergio Leone films are definitely that. They're dark. They're gritty, dirty. Clint is just perfect. He has that intimidating look and that scowl, those eyes. And he also has a sense of humor. So I was telling somebody today about it, and I was really struck. There's two elements of Fistful of Dollars. Well, there's three really that makes it a classic. Remember the end of Back to the Future, where he has the little metal plate under his little poncho and pulls it over because he made it to a bulletproof vest? That comes from A Fistful of Dollars. Okay. So it's this. He's basically a bounty hunter. He shows up in this town. There's two rival. One group is running booze. One group is running guns. So he's gonna, well, you pay me and I'll kill that guy, and you pay me and I'll kill that guy. He's in the middle of this mess, and the opening scene, when someone tries to confront him, he goes by the Undertaker. You know how these old westerns are, man. The Undertaker's right there building a coffin. Remember how the scene was in Back to the Future where they're like, let me take... It was exactly like that. So he walks by and he could get 3 coffins ready. He shoots, ends up killing 4 guys. So he walks by and goes, my mistake, 4. So it's funny, it's fast, and it's cool, right?
So is this all before he started producing and all that?
Yes. I'll get to that, because this is still he's filming these over there. Mm-hmm. This is like 65, 66, and 67. They were all done over there. They didn't come out here until after that. So then they brought all of them in, and they kind of branded them all like they're one trilogy, like they're actually like the same. He has this mantra of the man with no name, this bounty hunter assassin that rides into town. No one really knows what his name is. And each of the movies, they call him by a different name. Like the first one, I think, is Joe, but he doesn't really say, hi, my name is Jim or whatever. Like, or they'll say something like, well, what is your name? Or I didn't catch your name. He's like, I didn't give it. Those kinds of things. But Good and the Bad, the Ugly is where the whistle comes in, that wah, wah, wah music, the colors. It's incredible. The showdown where you have 3 guys, right? Each one's got a gun on someone else. And you've seen this ripped off in tons of other movies. Like there's a famous Tarantino movie where there's 3 people pointing guns. It's exactly the scene. But he is secretly taking the bullets out of one of the gun. That, it held up so good. I was so thrilled that I actually sat and watched these again. A couple of them get a little long, kind of boring, a couple parts. But at the end of the day, they're really, really good.
He's the star of these movies.
These 3 movies. Yeah. So he comes back to America, and that's when he begins his own career. He starts directing westerns. He does this, man with no name kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm watching the one now. It's called High Plains Drifter. It is super dark. Like, this would be one I thought would get a warning. This is way worse than The Searchers.
And that's also a western.
Yeah. Yeah. He a woman who's basically like, the townswoman kind of comes on to him, but then he basically rapes her by our 2020 standards. It's not a romantic old Western scene. It's literally like, there were not romantic Western love affairs back then. It's like, oh, we're in a barn. It's brutal, right? And, toxic masculinity all the way.
Well, that's what you think of when you think of...
I know, that's what I think of. Well, I think of that with the Old West. Yeah, I think of that of the Old West. All right, so that was kind of where the list kind of started, and I put some of that together, and then I kind of got down to the 3 modern films. There's 3 really good modern Westerns. There's probably more, but these are my 3 that I enjoy watching. And then to me, the factor is how much would I want to rewatch them? Are they entertaining enough that I could sit through them again multiple times? So the first on that list is probably True Grit, the newer version of True Grit. Jeff Bridges stars as that John Wayne, the patch over the eye, Rooster Cogburn, the little girl, Maddie, where she's hired him to kill the guy that killed her dad. They have Matt Damon and Josh Brolin. Jeff Bridges is why this movie works. The Coen brothers make it darker and funnier. But Bridges, it's just transformative. He does not get credit for this performance. It makes John Wayne's not look good. It's really amazing film. You would love watching it. It's really a good film. So if you get a chance to watch the new True Grit, definitely recommend that. And I'm talking like a 9. This is really top-notch, top-tier movie. Tombstone is the lesser of the three as far as a rating would go. Like, it's more like I can give it a 7 or maybe closer to an 8 on a scale of 10. But it's all-star cast. Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer and Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton and Powers Booth and Michael Rooker is the guy that plays Yondu, and he was Merle on The Walking Dead, and there are literally like 12 super famous people in this Western, and it is very good contextually in being historically accurate, like at least the general scope of it. The Wyatt Earp narrative of him coming to town with his brothers after he has this legacy and trying to get away from that, getting sucked into this mess with basically just bandits. But have you seen Tombstone?
No.
Oh man, Doc Holliday is portrayed by Val Kilmer, and this is by far the best acting and performance of Val Kilmer's life, and the best portrayal of a Doc Holliday, because he had tuberculosis. So he's performing it as though he's in a constant state of sweat and not feeling well, coughing up blood in different scenes, always looking pale, and he pretends to be weak and then goes into a gunfight and just mows the guy down. And it is just a tremendous, and it's so rewatchable because there's so much things that happen. Historically, there's a lot of debate about these people. It's really much more interesting to understand that the difference between good guys and bad guys in the Old West is a line of being in the right town in the right way. And that takes us to Unforgiven, which is by far, you mentioned that one.
I've seen that.
It's by far the best modern. It may be the best Western of all time because it's so rewatchable. You watch it again, and Clint and Morgan Freeman and Gene Hackman and even Richard Harris, who plays the English Bob character, do such a great job of depicting this Old West life and style. The Gene Hackman version of that Little Bill sheriff, that violent sheriff, is a lot of what we think Wyatt Earp may have been like. He may have been more like, well, how do I make this good for me? You're not coming to my town, assassin, just pummeling the guy with the butt of his gun. That kind of person is a lot of what some of the Wyatt Earp stories are. He's not really this good guy we think of him as. But I will say, after watching them all, I did come away with at least a renewed entertainment for enjoying the Western as a genre, because I don't spend a lot of time watching Westerns. I don't seek them out, and I don't enjoy... There's a lot of other Westerns that have been done over the last few years that I just have enjoyed and kind of like, it was okay. So it's not something I'd recommend for people that don't really care for Westerns. But I do love some of the historical elements of capturing the time and how difficult life must have been. You go into a hotel and they're like, well, you got to pay someone to give you a bath because they got to heat up water and pour it in. If you don't get in the tub and they're pouring it in, it just gets cold before you can even get in the thing. So we just don't think about these things. Do you ever think about or come away with watching a Western, or are these certain elements that are at least being captured? Or
yeah, well, like I said earlier, Westerns I just don't watch. The only reason I watched Unforgiven, I don't know how many years ago that was, a couple decades maybe at least.
92.
All right, 3 decades. Was because I'm such a big fan of Clint Eastwood. So that's what drew me to it, but I've never watched it again. Well,
I think you'd enjoy the Good and the Bad and the Ugly series, just because of the nature of... This is where it really began. This is where that element of that, let's have non-Hollywood produced, gritty, darker, capture what it was really... It's tough, man. It was brutal. It was really done well, of life in those towns and some of that kind of stuff. It was pretty good.
Do you put Unforgiven as Clint's best movie?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to really go back and look at the whole list, make sure I was not being... It's pretty close. It won an Oscar. I'm pretty sure he didn't win the Oscar. It won about 5 out of 9 or something like that. I think Hackman got supporting actor, and I think design and sound and editing may have... It's just technically a great film.
Did he produce it?
I think he directed, wrote, starred he did the whole thing. And that is his last one. I think that's the bookend. He's done. And most people are like, I don't want to do more Westerns after that one. There's a lot of aversion. Because I didn't include it on this list because I haven't watched it in a minute. I didn't get to one. Pale Rider is also another great Western of his, too. It's another man with no name story. He's a preacher, collar on. People think he's a preacher. He comes into this mining town and helps them fend off the bad guys. Not a whole lot to it. Not a lot of good...
Sounds like an intriguing story, though.
But it was interesting. Yeah. And it was good. And he's just so good as this quintessential quintessential assassin bounty hunter kind of guy. But going back to those very first ones and seeing him in his youth, the humor is to me what I was most surprised by in rewatching them. Was they're technically very sound, and those end scenes, these end shootouts that they contrive for these different movies, all three of them are different. And the villain in at least one of them, he plays more of a kind of a quasi bad guy like Clint. It's just amazing. Van Cleef is his last name. Lee Van Cleef, I believe, is his name.
Do you see Clint in any of those early westerns from the '60s? Any of that coming out into the Dirty Harry of the
Absolutely,
70s?
totally Dirty Harry. Totally Dirty Harry, especially by the time you get to Good and Bad, the Ugly, where he's really got it down. He's really got what the gritty bounty hunter looks are going to be, and he's kind of staring. He's got this cigarette thing he's doing all the time. You can definitely see him transitioning to that behind the big gun is where that comes from. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You definitely can. And once Dirty Harry comes into play, you can see how Clint's career is never going to be the same, because he can pull off something that's different that most people are not seeing. And again, the time of that, right? So Dirty Harry and Death Wish, gun laws in America, crime in America, all that, it just fuels that as being something people want to go see.
I'm going to take you back a few years. There's actually a Clint movie that I really, really enjoyed right around that 70s time frame, and it was called Play Misty for Me. Do you recall that?
I've seen it once. I don't think I've seen it in a while.
You weren't a big fan? Yeah.
No, I've seen it. I'm not saying I even not a big fan. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had a stalker.
Sure.
Very, very creepy movie.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah. It's good stuff. It's really good stuff. So, anyway, folks, tell me what you think. Maybe you like westerns, maybe you don't. On the cancel topic, when does Blazing Saddles make that list?
Why would be the reason?
Blazing Saddles?
Yeah.
Oh, even though it's mocking racism, it is so offensive in some ways. I mean, oh man, Blazing Saddles is brutal. So, all right, best westerns of all time. Maybe you got a favorite. Maybe I'm just completely wrong and you're going to correct me. I can handle it. Go ahead, tell me what you think. But I think Unforgiven, totally the best, rewatchable, great film. True Grit, probably technically sound right there. And then I think Tombstone behind that as far as rewatchable. I don't even count The Good and the Bad and the Ugly and the other two, Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More in the same category. They deserve their own category, because we wouldn't have those versions now if it wasn't for those. It's just different.